everybody. My name is Daniel Cheng, and I am a graduate student from the Faculty of Education at SFU. So today we have invited Dr. Deborah Butler from UBC to talk about her experiences.
I'm a professor here in the Faculty of Education at the University of British Columbia. Mm-hmm. I work in the Department of Educational and Counseling Psychology and Special Education, and I've been here since 1994. My interests have evolved over the years. Everything I've done has always been around understanding what it looks like to be kind of a strategic, empowered, and self-regulating learner.
Right.
And so my career, I've kind of looked at that from different angles. Early on, I really worked a lot with students who were struggling to be successful in school, and I wanted to understand why and what was derailing them. And I found that I did these in-depth case studies over a semester or even a full year. Like I did 100 of those, and I kind of really tried to analyze, so what's going on for these learners when they're asked to do academic work?
Right.
Why are they or are they not being successful? And it gave me a really a rich window into understanding learning from students' points of view. At the same time, the other angle I've looked at it from is, so what do we do about it then? If we understand that learners are trying to be, we need to support them to understand learning, understand themselves as learners, and be empowered as learners, what can we as educators do about that?
I see, yeah.
So I've worked with, from that angle, I've worked with students with who have been identified as having learning disabilities, but then I've also worked with all students in inclusive classrooms.
Yeah.
So I'd say the first phase of my career was all about understanding learning and then what we do to support learning.
Right, I see.
And I think that was like a really good chunk of my work. And then after that, what I thought, well, then what do we do about it? How do we actually make a difference in schools?
Yes. Yeah.
So the last 15 years of my work has been about working with educators.
Teacher education.
So teacher education, and even more than that, ongoing professional learning.
Okay.
And understanding teachers as self-regulating learners.
Wow.
And thinking about, well, how, if we know all this about self-regulation and how to support it, how do we help teachers bring it to life in their classrooms? And so that's what my work has been, and actually studying that. And so, some of my most recent work with my former graduate student, now colleague at UBC Okanagan, Leighton Schneller, we've been looking at, well, how do we engage teachers in learning experiences that enable them, empower them, and help them develop their practices in ways that then support learners.
All right.
So I've used an SRL lens for both learning in both contexts, learners and teachers. In fact, the work I've done over time on student learning and teacher professional learning has always been done in collaboration with graduate students.
Right.
But most recently, I thought for this purpose, I'd highlight the work of a few of my graduate students that I think is really pushing the edge.
Yes. Yeah.
And one of the graduate students I have is a fellow named Aloysius Aniichi. And it's he who's really driving this really exciting work about looking at the interface between in the productive synergies between thinking about empowering learners to understand and navigate their own learning from an SRL point of view and culturally responsive teaching. Because his question is, how is it that we're creating spaces that are recognizing the cultural diversity in our learners. And he thought that the principles underlying culturally responsive teaching are telling us how do we create classroom environments that are culturally responsive, that enable all learners to find pathways. And he goes, but the SRL lens helps us understand, well, how do they take up the opportunities for learning in those contexts? So he's actually doing a study with educators, building practices that take the two in tandem, putting them into place and then seeing how learners can be supported better in those classrooms. And in Canada, that's so important, and North America generally, right, with our culturally diverse learners.
Yeah, a lot of culturally diverse learners in K to 12, right, especially immigrant society.
And so Aloysius is going to actually be, I'll be there too, but he'll be presenting his work at A Area. He did last year, and he'll be presenting it at A Area this year as well.
Did he get accepted?
Yeah, he did.
Wow, okay, I'm looking forward to him.
And so his work is really notable. And then I just would say another of my doctoral students.
Okay.
Because is Nikki Yee. And Nikki's work is looking at, she's very interested in indigenous education and decolonizing pedagogies to have equity. And she has looked at the intersection between indigenous ways of knowing and decolonizing pedagogies and supports for SRL and tried to say where are they convergent and where can they be combined to better support diverse learners in classrooms.
Oh, I see.
So, I mean, those are two of my doctoral students, you know, and I have another, Shelley Moore, whose work is cutting edge on creative and inclusive spaces for students with disabilities and how SRL supports that. And another, Kimberly McNeil, whose work is looking at how do you create a community of educators who are themselves engaged in a kind of collaborative inquiry or self-regulated learning to develop their practices. And she's studying the processes behind the professional development of teachers. So, and how you can create systems change, actually, in fact, by supporting teachers to engage in meaningful ways of learning. So for me, the most exciting thing I do right now is that I get a chance to work with these graduate students who I think in various ways are, so it's extending, like I feel like I'm extending my own research in these exciting ways.
Okay.
I'll make some comments that I hope are helpful to finding your own unique voice. I think the examples I gave you, what they do is they show how the doctoral students who I've had a chance to work with, master's students too, they found kind of a unique path. It's builds from the work that they've been exposed to, but they found their kind of passion, their own interest, their unique way of making a contribution. And I think when you're doing graduate work, you really need to find your own voice. You need to find your passion. You have to find what you care about. So you want to build from what your supervisors are doing, but you want to say, what do I really care about? What do I really want to make a difference on? And then I think find your research in that area.
Okay.
I think that helps. The other thing I would just say is, in my own experience and what I try to provide for students, collect people around you who can help you move your pathway forward.
Or building your social connections.
Connections, but also the people, for example, sometimes people think, well, I have to have a supervisor, right? And a supervisor will give me everything I need.
Oh, yeah.
But really, I think often it's what do the various faculty around you have that they can offer and create and learn as much as you can from all of the people around you, right?
Yeah, I see.
And create opportunities for yourself to engage in a range of different kinds of research. From a range of different kinds of perspectives. Like, don't just come in and say, this is my interest, what I'm doing, my supervisor, and be narrowly focused, but expand your breadth of expertise and your theoretical breadth and your skill at research by exposing yourself as much as possible to different people and different perspectives and gain as much as you can. The graduate studies is this beautiful opportunity you have to just learn with and from people who come at what you're studying from different points of view. And that, I think, is a really key way to position yourself well to be productive as an educational researcher in your future.
Okay, thank you, Deborah. Today we have invited Dr. Deborah Butler from UBC, the Faculty of Education, to share some of her experiences. So we hope that those tips that Deborah shares today will help those graduate students to be successful in their academic path. And thank you so much, Deborah.
You're very welcome.